Hey guys, you found it. Welcome to the Fearless Pursuit of Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Richards. I'm a real estate investor and avid entrepreneur based out of Flagstaff, Arizona. My company is OPF and we flip, wholesale, and buy businesses. Listen in as I interview the nation's leading entrepreneurs and discuss the monumental battles of business and life. Hey guys, thanks for coming back to the show. I have got Dave Foster here with me today, and we're going to do some 1031 learning today. So, Dave, tell us a little about yourself. You previously, before the interview, told me you're out of Florida. I have a buddy moving to Florida, so it's piqued my interest a little bit. But tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got to be a 1031 expert and intermediary.
Yeah, your buddy and a few thousand others, Brandon.
Yeah.
I feel like we should be shutting the gates out.
I know. It's nice weather,
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, actually, the way I ended up in Florida is part of my 1031 exchange story.
Awesome.
Actually,
Yeah.
My wife and I were living in Denver, Colorado in the mid-90s. We were both in, fairly high pressure, high profile careers. And this magical thing happened. We had our first child.
Mm-hmm.
And that just changed life.
Yeah.
We realized that time was the commodity we wanted to value the most, time with family. And so we started talking to me like, how can we get off the corporate train? How can we become our own masters so we can spend the time we want with our family?
Yep.
And I don't know, somebody yelled, let's buy a sailboat and sail away.
Mm-hmm.
And we said, well, that'll be okay, except for Vicki, you're from Minneapolis. Dave's from Kansas. We live in Colorado. What the heck?
Yeah.
So I think it was, she probably said, had the bright idea of, well, let's just become real estate investors and we can move wherever we want.
Yeah, just like
It'll
that.
be easy, right?
Yeah.
But what we did was we embarked on a journey then over the next 10 years.
Oh.
And because we found through a mistake of mine, the 1031 exchange,
Yeah.
we were able to move our entire real estate portfolio from Colorado to Connecticut, where mistake number two, there was water in Connecticut to put a sailboat on, but it wasn't warm. So we had to then move our portfolio from Connecticut to Florida. And through that entire process, never paid a penny in capital gains tax and actually carved off enough tax-free dollars that we were able to buy a 53-foot sailboat, move aboard, and raise our children on it for 10 years.
Wow.
That's the 1031 exchange for me.
That's crazy. So literally 2 minutes before I got on this interview, I was ending another interview with a guy, and sorry, I got something in my mouth, like a little fuzzy. Oh, there it goes. His partner spent 13 years on a sailboat, or sorry, three's in my mind, 3.5 years in a sailboat. So what a coincidence that we're both discussing sailboats in two simultaneous podcasts here. That's awesome.
Oh, it was an awesome life, I got to tell you.
Yeah.
But what made it sweeter was I'm just naturally, I hate taxes.
Yeah.
And so for me to be able to do that without and do it with the tax dollars I didn't pay to the government,
Yeah,
just made it doubly sweet.
Yeah. Well, I assume you were no expert in the beginning. So how'd you get into it, and what are kind of what are some of the things that you learned along the way?
Well, I'm a degreed accountant, so I have this natural tendency to search the code to always find, what kinds of things I can use.
Yeah.
And the basic principle of that, it's actually very interesting. A mentor challenged me once, stop looking at the tax code as a way the government uses to get your money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's our typical thought, right? Oh, it's a tax code, I got to pay money. So no. Look at it as a behavior incentivizer. And if you perform the behaviors that the government wants,
Yeah.
they will reward you.
Yeah. Okay.
So in this case, what does the government really want to need in America? It's got to have a vibrant real estate economy. There's got to be active, there's got to be buying, selling, there's got to be inventory for people who are first homeowners. There's got to be inventory for large institutional investors. There are a few million people whose livelihood depends on the real estate industry.
Yeah.
So, how do they reward? What is it they want to incentivize? Active real estate transactions.
Yep.
How do they reward that? By letting investors sell investment real estate and then purchase new investment real estate and not have to pay the tax that they normally would have. It's indefinitely deferred.
Yeah.
So in our case, we started to do that. And the tax dollars that we didn't pay went to buy more real estate. So it was a way of just giving us extra leverage to go
Right.
buy more real estate, which we then made money off of. And then we made money off the money we made on the taxes that were
Hmm.
deferred. And it just escalates in cycles.
Yeah.
And so the way I discovered it, though, was through my first transaction, which still keeps me up at night because it was the one where I bought the property, fixed it up, put a renter in it, and then later sold it. I thought I'd done pretty well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my accountant said, get a $30,000 check ready
Yep.
because that's what you owe for selling that real estate. That was not part of the plan.
Right.
So that's when I really got serious about my search to mitigate that. And as it happened, that right at that time, there was a major court case that had been settled where the IRS lost. Now, that doesn't happen very often, anyways,
Yeah. I would imagine so.
but it was over the 1031 exchange. And
Interesting.
now the 1031 exchange was going to be available to people just like you and I.
Yeah.
And I said, well, that's it. We got to do that. So not only did I start doing that for myself, but the results were so strong that we actually started an intermediary service because the IRS requires that you use the services of a person called the qualified intermediary
Yep.
to process your 1031 exchanges. And so, here we are almost 30 years later, and I haven't looked back,
Yeah.
and I still haven't paid a penny in capital gains tax since.
That's awesome. Random question. It's jumping the gun a smidge. So for like a real estate broker or a lot of licensed mortgage loan officers, they're all licensed in their states. As an intermediary, can you be and operate in multiple states?
Yeah, strangely enough, this is one of those truth is weirder than fiction moments.
Huh?
You can be a qualified intermediary anywhere for anyone as long as you don't have any other relationship with them. So the
Okay.
IRS actually in statute defines a qualified intermediary as one who is not disqualified.
So,
I swear. And what disqualifies you is if you have a business relationship.
gotcha.
So your accountant cannot do your 1031 exchanges, your realtor, your brother, but somebody who's not your accountant
Mhm.
can. So what that's given rise to are companies like ours, where that's all we do. We're attorneys, we're accountants, but we don't do anything but 1031 exchanges,
Gotcha.
which is perfect for me because I hate doing taxes anyways.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I'd venture to guess that most people hate doing taxes. Uh, there might be like 12 sick people in this country that like doing taxes.
Yeah, that could be.
Well, on the assumption that we've got some newbies in our audience here, what is a 1031 exchange?
Yeah, so the 1031 exchange, exactly as I described it, is nothing more than you have a piece of investment property and it's either appreciated, so you're going to make money on it,
Yep.
or it's been depreciated, that pretend game
Yep.
that the IRS plays, where they let you pretend that your asset declines in value every year.
Based off of wear and tear and age and such.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
what they say.
Yeah.
How often does that really happen?
Yeah.
It's actually a great tax write-off while you own the property.
Yep.
But here's where the other shoe drops. When you sell that gift they gave you,
Mhm.
they make you give it back.
Yeah. Yeah. Give me that back. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, just kidding. I really didn't mean to have.
Yeah.
So the 1031 exchange will let you sell that investment property and using the process of the 1031, simply go and buy another piece of investment property And as long as you follow the guidelines, as long as you use the intermediary, as long as you purchase at least as much real estate as you sold, you get to indefinitely defer paying back the depreciation and paying tax on the gain.
Oh, and the depreciation. Interesting.
Yes,
Okay.
it's huge.
Yeah, yeah. So
So,
sorry.
no,
Well,
you said so first.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
I'll explain my understanding of 1031 because I've never personally done one. I've had friends, of course, that have done them, but I haven't been in their shoes or alongside them to learn it really. So my understanding of a 1031 is it's a like for like. Um, so my full comprehension of that terminology isn't solid there. So what I'm thinking is I can go from a single family rental to another single family rental, or maybe a duplex or quadplex, I think is the understanding. But you can't
It's
go from
even
a
better than
piece.
that. It's
Okay.
even better. So there's two phrases that the IRS uses: like kind
Yep.
and qualified use. All
Okay.
like kind means is that it's real estate.
Oh,
I know.
okay.
So check this out. As a
Yeah.
market goes,
Yeah.
you started out in single family. It's time to move to multifamily.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
can do that tax deferred. You got multifamily. It's time to go into commercial, tax deferred with a 1031. Any type of real estate anywhere in the country. That's like kind.
Interesting. So
Qualified use simply means that you've been holding it for investment use. So, not your primary
yeah,
residence
right.
and not a property where your primary intention is to sell it. A fix and flip, for instance.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Your intent has to be to hold it.
Okay.
But for all those adrenaline junkies out there who love the fix and flips, and yes, I'm a member of the club, all you've got to do to change your model so that you can qualify for 1031 exchanges is right at the beginning, instead of buy, fix, and sell, you buy, fix, rent, and then later sell.
Yep.
So you establish your intent to hold it. Now, if you're like me, you're going to get bored while you're holding it. So you do a buy, fix it, rent it, then refinance it.
Mm-hmm.
Take that money to go buy your next project.
Yep. Because
So you're
that's
staying busy while your first property is seasoning.
right. So my next assumptions are okay. I didn't realize that was a thing. I didn't realize you can go as long as it's real estate, you're good to go. So that's new knowledge to me. Um, Next, it's let's say it's single family house. You've had it for say 5 years. You've got $150,000 in equity now. You take that $150,000, you push it into now with my new knowledge. Let's say a 25 unit apartment complex. Now that 150,000 could be your down payment with the bank, whereas prior, if you had sold it without the holding portion of it, would have been taxed 30 to what 40 some odd percent for short term capital gains. So you're saving the 30, 40%, and now you've got your tax-free down payment for the next property and kind of snowballing. The other part that I keep confusing is I thought there was an identification period where once you knew you wanted to sell, you had to essentially find something and purchase within X amount of time frame. But I recently learned, tell me if I'm wrong, that you simply have to identify the next asset that you're buying. Is that right?
Yeah, there's two different time periods,
Okay.
and they both start with the sale closing
Okay.
of your old property.
Okay.
You've got 45 more days from that date
Okay.
simply to identify your potential replacements.
Yep.
Now, the problem is that at the end of day 45, that list gets set in stone and you can't change it.
Okay.
So if you put a property on there but you're not under contract, then you get outbid for it and you're past day 45.
Ouch.
You're out of luck.
Yeah.
So you really do want to try to get your new property under contract during that 45-day period and get as far along as you can.
Right.
If for no other reason than that the sooner you close your purchase, the quicker cash flow restarts.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense to do that.
Right.
As a matter of fact, you can even go into contract for your new property before you sell your old property.
Yep.
You just can't take title to it.
Right, right, right. Because the funds from the closing of the loan has to be held by the intermediary, but and then distributed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of ways to mitigate that 45-day angst.
Mhm.
Now, from that date of sale, you have 180 days to complete the purchase.
Okay.
So let's say you were wanting to sell. Oh my gosh, this is so common these days. People have been investing in all these value add assets
Yep.
where they buy it, they think it's a 80-year-old building, they buy it, they fix it up. Well, it's still an 80-year-old building. It's still got hidden capital expense items that could crop up.
Hmm.
And if you're, it's not very uncommon for one roof to eat up 3 or 4 years of cash flow.
Oh yeah. Easy.
So instead, what they're doing is they're selling these before those bad capital expense items happen,
Hmm.
and they'll buy new construction. Now, that new construction might not be done for 2 years when they go into contract,
Hmm. Right.
but they'll go into contract for it, and then a year and a half or a year and 8 months later, they'll sell their old property so that they can take title to this new construction
Mhm.
within 180 days of when they sell the old property. And in that one step, they got something that's going to rent higher because it's newer. They got rid of capital expense risk and they didn't have to pay a penny in tax.
Mhm. Awesome. Yeah, I had no idea you can go into a non or an incomplete new construction project. That's brand new news to me. That's awesome. So what happens if you are under contract to sell your property? You're on your way to close of escrow on your current asset. You've identified the next one and you have it under contract. What happens if that contract falls through? The first one closes, and now the monies are held by the intermediary. That contract falls through, but you didn't make it a point to identify multiple properties, or can you identify multiple properties? What happens then?
Well, you can identify multiple properties within some limits. This is another one of those what were they thinking IRS moments
Yeah,
that we don't understand, but they made
yeah,
the rule.
all of them.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Hmm.
If you name three or fewer, it doesn't matter what they're worth. So you could sell $100,000 asset and name three $5 million replacements. That's perfectly fine. Now, don't I really encourage people, don't think of that as something that should let you relax.
Mhm.
Because remember, once day 45 passes, you're stuck with only what's on the list. And if you go through 45 days negotiating on one property and then it falls through at the end, the chances of the other two still being around are pretty slim.
Right.
But they're going to be all you've got to choose from.
Yep.
So just be careful about letting that make you too complacent. But if you name three or fewer, doesn't matter what they're worth.
Yep.
You can name more than three, but then their total value either cannot be more than 200% of the value of what you sold, or you have to purchase every one of the properties.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So they're obviously they don't want to have a lot of information they've got to track down
Yeah.
if they decide to do an audit.
Huh. That is the strangest rule.
I know, right? It's so the rule of thumb is if you're looking to buy a bigger asset than you sold,
Mhm.
keep your list to three or fewer.
Yep.
If you're selling a larger asset to go buy many smaller ones, which is an awesome strategy, take that money and divide it into multiple down payments.
Yeah.
Then you can use the four or more. But again, try to be as far down the road on that as you can
Yeah.
during the 45-day period. So that if there's a few properties on your list that you're not going to make work, you could drop them off your list on day 45.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like to me somebody should be talking to somebody like you well before any decisions are made to move into the next asset.
That really is the best way. Planning is key
Yeah.
with anything, right?
Yeah. Right.
And there's so many different off ramps and directions And that's what we're there for. Although the IRS simply says we're there to document the process and to hold the proceeds, there's so much that can be done before that even happens
Yeah.
to help you direct your strategy so that it's going to accomplish what you really want to accomplish.
Yeah. Couple things arise when now in Arizona, Texas, where I operate. I'm broker here, so I see it. Is it a requirement for the investor that is selling the asset and buying a new one to notify the potential purchase that a 1031 is happening? Is that a requirement, or would you assume that that's a a local to the state requirement based off of contract contingencies?
Yeah, that's actually a federal requirement for the 1031
Okay.
that all parties have to be notified to the 1031 exchange. But here's the dirty little secret, it never says when.
Okay.
So, what we do to make sure that the law is always covered
Yeah.
is we provide those notifications as part of the closing.
Yeah.
But you can imagine as a broker, there's a lot of reasons why someone might say, but I don't want this to be known
Yeah.
in the negotiation because they'll hold it against me.
Oh yeah.
So what
Yeah.
can I do?
Yeah. Yeah. We know you identified us, so they're gonna
Right.
start pushing you in due diligence, and yeah.
Exactly. Now, I know that you've seen some of the cooperation clauses. That's easy enough to do. You simply put a cooperation clause in the contract that
Mhm.
says our seller or our buyer is doing a 1031 exchange and you agree
Mhm.
to cooperate.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't affect them at all
Right.
unless they're choosing to try to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
But you could do something even better, and that is simply make your contracts assignable. Now, that doesn't inform anybody about anything that's going on. It simply says that if you're selling the property, that you can assign that contract to a different entity to sell to them. Or if you're buying a property, you can assign your rights to buy the property to a different entity.
Yeah.
That's all it is. Doesn't say anything about the 1031,
Right.
doesn't give the other party any kind of knowledge that they could use against you
Right.
at all. But that by itself lets the intermediary do anything else that they would need to do.
Right. Huh.
So there you go. If you want to keep it absolutely secret, just make your contracts assignable.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. The other question I had was, being as I never done one, well, I guess that's not really irrelevant, but what in the process do you think is always a surprise or an aha moment for, a good portion of your relations with these investors? Like you've done, I assume, hundreds by now. What does the overwhelming investor say, like when they get to process X? They're like, what? Or really? Or like, is there some that sticks out in that instance?
Yeah, yeah. Hundreds was last month. It's
Oh
amazing how many are going on.
Lord. Okay.
Yeah, well over a million 1031 exchanges every year.
Yeah.
It's actually crazy out there. But I would say the two biggest, aha or oh crap
Yeah. Yeah.
moments
Yeah.
are going to be the identification period
Yeah.
when they start looking late
Yeah.
and they're
Okay.
not focused. The only exchanges I've ever seen fail because of those timelines are when they didn't know what sector of real estate they wanted to go into
Yeah.
and they didn't know where in general they wanted to go.
Geographically.
Exactly. And so
Huh.
it's now 2 weeks after their closing, and they're still trying to decide between New York and San Diego and Nashville.
Yeah.
And they're still trying to decide commercial, vacation rental, or multifamily.
Mm.
And I just tell them, it's like, look, your exchange is going to fail
Yeah.
because there's too much information for you to process. You got to pick a lane and just go with it.
Right.
And that's huge. But a lot of people have trouble focusing
Yep.
because they get excited about the possibilities
Yeah. Yeah.
because there are so many possibilities.
Right.
The other one is in the reinvestment requirements. And you actually mentioned that as we were answering the last question, but we didn't talk about it yet. And that is that if you want to defer all tax, you have to do two things. You have to purchase at least as much as your net sale, and you have to use all of the proceeds from the sale in your purchase or purchases.
Okay.
A lot of people think, oh, all I have to reinvest is the profit. You're only taxed on the profit. That's true. But here's the problem. If you choose to take money out of the exchange, which you can, or if you want to buy less than you sold, the IRS is going to say, wait a minute, we're letting you do a 1031 exchange and leaving our tax with you.
Hmm.
You're agreeing to leave all your money in the game as well. So if you're taking any money out, we're just going to say you're taking profit.
Hmm.
And, we want to say, no, I'm not. I'm taking the $20,000 down payment
Yeah.
that I put in. That's all I'm doing. The IRS says, that's fine, but you're not taking the $20,000 down payment out. You're taking $20,000 of your profit,
Hmm.
and you're going to pay tax on that amount.
So that makes me think now a fix and flipper isn't relevant. Or let me think, let's say I've got a 25 unit and on the purchase, I knew capital expenditures were going to be in the amount of 250,000. I get in the project and well, every rehab goes over. And now I'm into it 350,000, but I didn't want to go back to my investor and ask for another 100,000. So you've personally got 100,000 in there. So you've done it, you held it 5 years down the road, you want to sell it, and your let's say gross proceeds from the settlement statement is 350,000, whatever it is. But 100,000 of that is supposed to go back to your pocket to recoup your input into the project. Is that something that would trigger the last conversation where they're like, hey, you can't take that 100,000 out, it's stuck?
Yeah, if it just got put in as a contribution,
Yeah.
like if you own that property as an entity, like an LLC,
Yeah.
and your investor put 250 into it, and you put 100 into it,
Yep.
that's going to have to stay in the 1031.
Ouch. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, there's other ways to structure it
Yeah.
because when you sell a property, every lien that's recorded against that property has to be satisfied. So you might decide to treat that 100,000 as a loan to the entity
Mm,
and record the loan so that upon sale, the loan has to be paid back.
gotcha. That's great, actually. That's
And that
good.
could work. Now, then you
Yeah.
get into things like imputed interest, and you've got to collect that. Your investor has to be willing
Yeah.
because you're kind of coming to them saying, hey, I love your money, but I want my money back.
Right.
So have fun
Right.
with that argument.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh. Okay.
But yeah, that's exactly how you solve that.
Tricky, but in a roundabout way, a little bit of a solution. Huh. Seems pretty cool. So before the show, I mentioned or asked, can you do a 1031 exchange and a cost segregation on the same asset? Um, both have their pros and cons, from my understanding, and both technically are recaptured at some point, whether through the transfer sale or disposition of the asset, or if you die and your kids inherit it and then they sell it. It's got to be captured somewhere. So how does a 1031 and a cost segregation, whether accelerated, how does that work in conjunction with each other? And is there pros and cons about doing them both, or?
Yeah. Well, hang on to your hat
Okay.
because you said something that wasn't quite right when
Okay.
you talked about you got to recapture it someday.
Okay.
You don't. We'll talk about that
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
in just
Good.
a
Good.
second.
Yeah.
First of all, what exactly is cost segregation? So remember, we talked about that pretend game of depreciation
Yep.
where you get to pretend that you're losing money every year and you get a tax write-off for that.
Hmm.
Cost segregation is another absolutely crazy game of pretend where you take a piece of property and you pretend that that house isn't real estate.
Okay.
Some of that house is real estate, but some of that house is copper wire. Some of that house is light fixtures.
Yep.
Some of that house is a water heater. And those things aren't real estate. But magically, when they're all together under the same structure, their real estate,
Mm.
right?
Yep.
Here's why that's important. The things we talk about, like wire and fixtures, equipment, and things like that, are what are called 1245 property. It's non real estate property, and you get to depreciate that much more quickly. Sometimes in the first year you own it. Sometimes you get to depreciate it out over 5 years. So you can actually, by doing the cost segregation and separating out the 1250 property, which is real estate, from the 1245 property, which isn't real estate, you can get a tremendous boost to the annual depreciation you're able to claim. Makes sense, right?
Mhm.
Sort of. Again, the problem is when you sell that property, the IRS says, okay, you had fun getting that tax write off. Now pay it back.
Hmm.
And that's not so bueno.
No.
So the question has always come over years since 2017 that regular real estate depreciates over 27 years. And what happens if you've got some of your property that's been declared real estate for depreciation, some of the property that's been declared as not real estate for depreciation? You can only 1031 real estate. So does that mean then that the depreciation on the real estate I get to carry forward and defer paying on, but
Hmm.
the rest of it I have to pay on? That
That's
would make
getting,
it not such a fun event, wouldn't it?
yeah, it gets really complicated, it seems like.
Yeah. Fortunately, though, there's been several revenue rulings in recent time that essentially are saying that if the real estate you're selling that you cost segregate, if you're buying real estate that has a roughly equivalent same configuration of stuff, non-real estate stuff. So if you need cost seg now and you're now buying a house that has a water heater and copper wiring and light
Mhm.
fixtures, that's roughly equivalent
Yeah.
to what you cost segregated out. And what the IRS has now said is that you can also then include that depreciation and defer it in your new process. So what does that mean? When the dust settles, I can buy a property, I can cost seg it, so I get a tremendous amount of depreciation to offset income on it. And then when I sell it, I can 1031 exchange and buy new real estate and not have to recapture all of that depreciation. But even more, let's say I sold my property for 500,000 and I go buy $1 million property. Not only am I not going to pay any tax on all of that depreciation and all of that profit, I've also just bought $500,000 more real estate that's called additional depreciable basis. So what can I do? A cost segregation on that extra 500,000.
Okay.
Take the tax advantage. What am I going to do? Sell the property and defer again. And then, of course, Brandy, you said, but don't you have to pay it sooner or later?
Mhm.
The answer is no. Because as long as you own the real estate, as long as anytime you sell it, you do a 1031 exchange, you will continue to defer the tax until you die. And when you die, your heirs inherit that real estate as if they paid market value for it on the day you die.
Mhm. Okay.
So all of that tax, all that depreciation recapture over all those years, you don't pay it, your estate doesn't pay it, your heirs don't pay it. They get a tax-free legacy of wealth from you in the form of real estate.
Hmm. Yeah, my
That's not so bad,
understanding.
is it?
No, no, no. My understanding of that was at some point you're ponying up those dollars to pay back the IRS for giving you that little bucket to kick down the road. Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is why what a lot of people will do, we're kind of starting to get into what I call the four major benefits of the 1031 exchange.
Mhm.
They all start with D. The first one we just discussed, it's die.
Yep.
I know that doesn't sound like a great benefit,
No, no.
but you die, your heirs get the property tax free. I mean, short of dying, that's an okay scenario.
Yes, that sounds pretty good. Yeah.
The second one, though, is that what we hinted at, that any time throughout your life, whatever it is that you're trying to do in your particular circumstance, you can use the 1031 exchange and never pay the tax. So a lot of people, as they go through their life cycle, will get to a point where they want to retire. Well, instead of starting to sell off your investment properties to pay tax to retire on, sell your primary residence. Because if you've lived in your primary residence and you're married for 2 out of the previous 5 years, then you get to take the first $500,000 of profit tax-free.
Mhm.
You can do it if you're single, it's just you only get 250.
Yeah.
But you get that tax-free. So why not sell your primary residence instead and move into one of those really, really nice vacation rentals that you bought using the 1031 exchange?
Yeah,
As
yeah.
long as you own it, you won't pay the tax on it. And here's where the other shoe drops. As soon as you move into it, you've converted it into your primary residence. And as soon as you have owned it for 5 years and lived in it for at least 2 out of the previous 5, you get to start taking a proration of that tax deferred gain tax free.
Huh. Okay.
So let's say I did a 1031 exchange because I'm getting ready to retire. I want to retire in Breckenridge.
Mhm.
So I buy a condo in Breckenridge using a 1031 exchange. I use it, I put it in central management reservation for a couple years. And then I retire. I sell my house here. That money's tax free,
Yep.
goes in my pocket. I move into my Breckenridge house. And then I live there for 3 years. Have I owned it for 5? Yep. Have I lived in it for 2 out of 5? Yep. So I would get to take 3/5 or 60% of the gain tax free.
Huh.
And I can do that tax free sale once every 2 years. Now, if I happen to live in Breckenridge for 8 out of 10, I would get 80% of the gain tax free
Wow. Okay.
and only have to recapture depreciation. So I have a whole nation of investors that are planning their retirements around moving into these beautiful vacation rentals
Mhm.
that they've started to collect over the years.
Well, I need to put that into my game plan, it looks like. That's
So
awesome.
now the third way that the huge benefit that the 1031 exchange gives you is the ability to react not just to where you are in your life cycle, but to react to where the market is.
Yeah.
Because the market changes daily, monthly, yearly. I mean, we're going on a very long bull real estate market. And it's not the same as it was 10 years ago. But the 1031 exchange will allow you to change sectors and to change geographies and to change numbers and to change motivations depending on what the market is telling you. So if you start out in a single family rentals, but the thing to buy now or multifamily, the 1031 exchange lets you do it and keeps the tax working for you. If you're one of those people, one of those clients, those many clients I had in San Francisco in 2014, 2013, who were all selling because prices rose so high in Silicon Valley, and they all wanted to follow Elon to Austin, where they could buy cheap West Texas dirt
Mhm.
or hill country dirt. They made a killing, didn't they? Because they sold where appreciation had already jumped and bought where appreciation hadn't happened yet.
Right.
Same thing is true with cash flow. You can sell in an area where appreciation's great, but cash flow isn't so good. Use the 1031 exchange to go buy where cash flow is great even though appreciation might not be as high.
Right.
Because your motive is you want cash flow right then. You could go from one property to multiple properties to grow your portfolio. You could go from multiple properties to one property for ease of management or to get into an asset class that's going to work better.
Mm.
All of those things let you react to the market cycle without paying a penny in tax.
So before we jump into D number 4, you said from multiple to one. And so it sounds like, obviously, let's say I got a portfolio of 5 single family homes and I want to go into a 25 unit apartment complex. Do all 5 of those properties have to be in escrow set to close in order to 1031 those proceeds out of the 5 assets into the one, or can it be a sequential deal where it's done in phases?
In general, yes. They all have to be, because your replacement property has to have those 2 common criteria, right?
Yeah.
It has to be on every 45-day list, and you have to close on it within 180 days of the first sale, because that's the first exchange that's going to expire.
Right.
So if you're wanting to cluster them to sell 5 to buy 1, you do want to try to cluster them to sell close together
Yeah. Yeah.
so that your new property can be made to meet that. Now, there's a couple ways you can do that. Number one is the second you get your first sale, negotiate a contract on that that gives you the option for an extended closing, because that gives you more time to
Yeah.
get those other 4 under contract
Right.
so you can close them all closely together.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Secondly, negotiate your purchase with an extended closing that you can flex as well. Now, usually due diligence and the length of the contract process is longer for a multifamily or commercial property than it is for a single family.
Mhm.
So that's going to work to your advantage as well
Right.
when going from single family to something big, because you're going to have compressed closing times for those few sales. But those are all different ways you can make it work. The other way is what's called, and this is the deep end of the pool, but it's called a reverse exchange. Remember, we said you had to close the sale
Yeah.
of your old property before you take title
Yeah.
to your new property.
Okay.
When a reverse exchange, we don't change that. But what we do is we form an entity, and that entity takes title to your new property before you do.
Oh,
So
okay.
we own it. You haven't taken title yet.
Right.
And we can hold it for up to 180 days to give you time to close all the sales of your old properties. Now, they're quite a bit more expensive, obviously more complicated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Financing becomes an issue, but they're not a bad option sometimes.
Probably why I haven't heard that one, but that's awesome that's an option. Well, sorry to side jump you there. Item number 4, what we're looking at.
The fourth D,
Yep.
it's the one that's the easiest. It's called defer,
Okay.
because what we're really talking about with the 1031 exchange is taking advantage of the compounding effect. Every day or year that those tax dollars stay in your pocket, you're making the money off of them.
Right. Yep.
So whether it's 2 days or 20 years, every day means the money goes towards you. Remember my first mistake? I paid $30,000. That was 30 years ago. What if I would have done a 1031 exchange? That 30,000 would have gone to buy new real estate.
Yep.
And if I can make 10% a year on that, then that $30,000, what mathematics tells us, is going to double every 7.2 years. So take that 30,000, double that every 7.2 years over 30 plus years for me. Tell me how much more money I'd have
Uh, can't
rather
can't
than
math
just
that.
writing the stupid tax
Yeah.
check.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a bunch of money, right?
Oh yeah, it's a big number for sure. Huh. Okay. All right. Man, every time I talk to anybody about 1031, and I'm wondering why I'm still in fix and flipping.
I introduce you to a good analyst,
Mhm.
and you can sit on his couch and talk.
Wow. What else are we missing in regards to 1031s?
They're not although there's ways you can tweak it to make it fit into a fix and flip type of scenario, they're really designed to be a long game.
Yeah, yeah.
Because the longer they go, the better they are.
Right.
Uh, People say, when should I not do a 1031? I mean, there's always going to be personal reasons in your situation where paying the tax might be better.
Yeah.
If you're staring at 25% credit card debt, deferring 15% capital gains tax might not be the play. But in general, as long as you are buying new real estate, there's no reason not to do a 1031 exchange because you just keep your eyes focused on deferring and then listen to what the market says, react to it with a 1031. Listen to what your body's telling you, react to it using the 1031, and you'll never put yourself in a kind of position where you'll say, oh, why did I do that? I don't like what I did. Because what you did was not just for the tax deferral. You set a course to do what was best for you
Mhm.
or what was best to react to the market. And then we simply use the 1031 to do that. And that's a whole different game than you hear these people talk about. Don't do a 1031 exchange because it's the tax tail wagging the dog,
Yeah.
right? Don't do anything just to save taxes. Yeah, I totally agree. But how about you decide what you want to do? And then we can always find a way to keep the taxes at bay while you do that.
Yeah. Awesome. I feel like this is something I could probably spend a couple of hours on, but without consuming both of our days, I'll wait till I'm in amidst selling one to reach out and get more of those answers. But so you're out of Florida, you operate. Did I ask you in the interview or prior to the interview whether or not you can operate in any state? I think it was in the interview.
We talked about it in the interview, but
Yeah.
yeah, we can operate in any state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
By the way, if someone's wanting to retire in an island, you can also 1031 into the U.S. Virgin Islands and Guam and American Samoa.
Interesting. That's funny because I have a friend moving to St. John's right now. Well, in November, he's moving there in November, and that was one of my questions. Well, how does the real estate work there? I mean, is it like a lot of areas like Mexico where you don't actually truly own the land? You're just given like 100-year lease, or but
Well, actually, in Hawaii, there's a lot of 100-year leases like that as well.
interesting. Okay.
And what the IRS says is that as long as the lease is greater than 30 years, then you can treat that as if you own the real
Oh, okay.
estate. So you can
Interesting.
sell your real estate and buy a land lease in Hawaii,
Yeah.
just the same as.
Okay.
The U.S. Virgin Islands, you own real estate just like in
Yeah.
America.
Yeah. Right.
And because it's a U.S. territory where the treaties allow it, you can actually 1031 exchange into it.
Yeah. Awesome.
I
Yeah.
always volunteer, Brandon, by the way, to make sure to go there to monitor the purchase to make sure it goes okay.
Yeah. 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 Seems like a reasonable request. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course. That's awesome. Well, couple things. Well, first, I'll just grab your contact information. If anybody wants to reach out to you, what's the best way?
Just come grab us at the THE 1031investor.com.
Easy. Okay.
We've got articles, we've got calculators, we got a YouTube channel, opportunities to connect with us directly.
Yeah.
It's all right there. We want to be a resource that doesn't just do your 1031s. We want to help you move forward on your path.
Yeah. Awesome. Appreciate that. And then one thing I ask every guest that I interview, and it kind of shifts gears a bit, but if you had 6 months to live, what would you do with it?
I've never been asked that on a podcast. That's awesome. Let me think of this. Deserves a good answer. I think if I had 6 months to live, there would be 5 people that I would just spend every moment I could with.
Yeah.
My wife and children.
Yeah. And that's the answer that we all should be striving to achieve daily. And that's why I asked that really is I think I was fortunate enough to have that question come to mind about 10 years ago. And it really shifted not only the way I work, but the way I perceive my future and what I want to do in the future. And that's, and like my last interview, frankly, was all about time management and recapturing time as the most valuable asset. Um, and I think with the economy the way it is, there's so many things changing that has to be at the forefront. What's next, and will that consume more of my time? And and I don't know if I should have asked the kids or told the kids so young, but I used to always remind my kids was like, if you're heading to school and you were to get in an accident, you know, what what in life would you be thinking about? Because you're laying on your deathbed, and it's a little bit morbid, but you're not going to be thinking about, oh, well, that girl made fun of me today, or that guy dumped me last week. You're going to be thinking about the things that matter most, and that's typically family for almost everybody. And so, what can you do now to bring that to the forefront and not worry about the other stuff in life that doesn't really have an effect on your life in in a meaningful way? And I always back that up. Well, it's the 5 for 5. So if it's not going to affect your life in 5 years, why let it affect your life now for 5 minutes? And so that's why I bring up that question is just to bring the gravity of life to the forefront when we're as entrepreneurs pushing, and then just to remember like what are we actually here for? And that's and like I said, in almost all situations is family and friends.
We have a mantra in our family, simply says memories over money.
Yeah.
And we choose that, which is why I have a son who just moved into a yurt in Nome, Alaska.
Gnome,
And
huh?
a son who has been on organic farms throughout Australia
Yeah,
and Finland
yeah,
because they're choosing to make memories
yeah,
over money. Maybe because they think they're going to get that step up basis from me to
yeah,
get the
yeah.
1031s. But okay.
Right, right. Nome, Alaska. That's a strange area because that's right next to Fairbanks, which is next to shoot, I can't think of where I was going with that.
Which is
Uh,
next to really nothing.
yeah, I know. We went there like 3 years ago, and it's out in the middle of nowhere. There's a large military base, and
Yep.
um, South Pole. That's what I was thinking about. South Pole, Alaska is right there as well. Year round, there's Christmas stuff out on display. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. Thanks for your time, and I'll get this out as soon as I can.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, Dave. We'll see you.
Hey guys, hope you enjoyed today's content. I want to thank you all for listening in. And as the great Les Brown stated, if you are not pursuing your dreams, you are literally committing spiritual suicide. We'll catch you on the flip side.